Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you for bearing with us. We did have some Wi-Fi connectivity issues, but we got all sorted out. So we're here, and we're ready to jump into a writing seminar. If y'all need to duck out early, we totally understand. This will be available as a video recording. So if you want to come back at a later time and watch whatever part of the video you missed, you can just come to the same link and it will be available as a video. So no worries if you need to step away a little earlier than the event takes. It's no problem at all. These things happen. This is how tech is. So we're going to go ahead and do it now. All right. So before we get started, I just want to say hello and welcome everyone. My name is Talia. I'm the events manager at Flyleaf Books. Tonight, of course, we are doing an event with our beloved author, Jill McCorkle. We have copies of Hieroglyphics, Jill's newest book, available through the store. And she is available to come and sign copies and inscribe them for you, personalize them. Just specify that in your order comments, what name you'd like it signed to, and we will go ahead and get that all squared away for you. If you've already bought your copy but you'd like to support the store, you can donate a few dollars to us using the donate button below our faces. Totally up to you. If you have a couple dollars you'd like to shoot us, that would be awesome. We're very grateful for that support. All right. So let me just read a quick little intro for Jill, and then we'll jump right in. So Jill McCorkle is a native of Lumberton who went to UNC and had her first 2 novels published simultaneously when she was just out of college. Since then, she's published many novels and story collections. Her newest novel, Hieroglyphics, is now out in paperback as of this month. Jill was a Briggs Copeland Lecturer in Fiction at Harvard, where she also chaired the Department of Creative Writing. She is currently a faculty member at the Bennington Writing Seminars and is affiliated with the MFA program at NC State. All right, so thank you so much for joining us tonight, Jill. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera and give you the floor, but if you'd like me to come back on to read off audience responses at any point or questions, just shout and I'll be here. I'll turn my camera right back.
Okay, and I just may have you, in case my phone dies after all this, check in on the time so I don't try to keep these people hostage for hours because I may lose track. Thank you. And welcome. A big thank you to Flyleaf, and a big thank you to those of you who have been so patient. I had my office all set up and the light just right, and now I have myself in a window in the glare. So I apologize for all it took to get here, but we're here. Such as this virtual existence, and I really wish that we were all in the store right now. I'm so eager. I'm delighted always to be at Flyleaf and to do this kind of virtual class, and it's strange. I see that there are like maybe 95 people tuned in, and so what I'm going to do is talk a little bit, and then so much, revolves around your questions in a class like this. So I will look forward to questions and continuing the conversation that way. But I thought I would just begin by talking a little bit, spinning a story from bits and pieces. Anyone who's ever attended one of my classes, you're likely to hear some repeats. I both apologize for that and say I'll try to make it a little fresher. But at the same time, I feel like after all these years of doing what I do, that I have my process in place, and it's very much a collecting kind of process and putting pieces together. And I have those few choice things I like to say about writing fiction, and those don't seem to change over the years. And in fact, I think it would be very hard to reinvent myself as a writer each time in order to say something fresh and new. So long story short, repeats up ahead for anyone who's ever been here before. But I thought I would begin this class with a prompt. You don't have to actually write it down. You might want to. You'll hold it in your mind over the course of the discussion. On the first day of my class, for many years now, over 30 years, someone saying no audio. Can you hear me? Oh dear.
Yeah, Joe, we can hear you.
Okay.
Ruth, try refreshing. It might be just a connectivity issue, but you're all good, Joe.
All right, thank you. So first day of class, I would have you bring out a piece of paper and jot down the following: a scar that you have, not a physical, not an emotional one. Those are a little more difficult to work with. An actual physical scar that would have a story as to how you got it. A favorite toy from your childhood. I would like for you to complete the sentence, I wish. I would ask, what was your favorite fairy tale growing up? Maybe still. What is a commercial that drives you absolutely insane? What is a person or a thing or an opportunity that got away from you in life? And did I say your favorite toy from childhood? I think so. What is an early memory you return to? What is your favorite season? And just keep that off to the side. I will get back to it. My mom, as a writer, I'm very interested in memory, and I do a lot of mining of early memories. I'm endlessly fascinated about why we remember certain things when we do. Sometimes the connection's obvious, a piece of music, an old object. Other times it's a little bit harder to connect the tissue and really understand why we had a particular thought about something at a particular time. My mother has dementia and has for quite a few years, and as did my grandmother in those late years. And I've always been interested in hearing bits of stories and wondering what is actual truth, what is an individual's truth, how is that truth reshaped by the present moment and something else that might be happening. And one day several years ago, I went to visit my mother, never knowing if it would be a clear day with lots of genuine memories flowing or something out of left field that I did not connect with. And I went, and it was a really good day. And I said, I really want you to tell me how you used to make your vegetable soup, because it was the same vegetable soup my grandmother had always made, and something I really associate with my childhood. And I got very excited because my mother said, well, first, just go get a great big ham bone and then start boiling it. And I said, okay, this is good. This sounds right. Boil it for a very long time, keep boiling it. I'm thinking this is really good. And she said, and then after you have really boiled that ham bone, just go all over your house and collect any trinkets you can find and put them in the pot. And so that was the recipe. And of course, I got a laugh. She got a laugh. And I thought later that it very much is the recipe for how I do my work and have for years now. I'm a compulsive note taker. I think I realized early in life, with young kids and working full time, that if I was going to continue this writing thing, I had to be really flexible and just take advantage of any opportunity I found. And I often tell my students that, I sort of dare people to walk around with eyes and ears open and not see something worthy of a story. I think if you walk around every day with your eyes and ears open, you cannot possibly live long enough to write or tell all the stories you might encounter. And we've all had those times, where we feel this great moment of inspiration or this kind of emotional move. And we think, I will remember this forever. It's this feeling, this kind of universal feeling of connection. And I would say that we all know that feeling. We might take different avenues to arrive at the same address. But we do arrive in that place of emotional movement or emotional understanding. And I really do cling to that old definition of, a story being an event or a series of events that lead to that kind of emotional shift. So as a writer, finding your most natural path is key. And what makes each journey unique, I think, is the set of very different memories and ways that we see the world as individuals. So I thought I would just, before I open it to questions, give you an example of how what I have come to think of as kind of if you give a mouse a cookie method of writing. If any of you know that book, it's, the mouse gets the cookie, but first you got to veer over here and do this, and then you go and do this, and then you do that. It's kind of a multitasking, maybe attention deficit disorder a little bit, but my writing is often just that way. I might start off with a very small idea or something that I think would make a good story, and then I just let it sit and trust that other parts will find its way in. I think a good story is like a good juggling act, and so you certainly need more than one ball in the air. And oftentimes I might have an idea of a central piece of it, and I'm looking for those additional parts that bring the life to it. So quite a few years ago, I had this idea for a story I was working on. The story's called Surrender, and it's a pretty simple plot. It's a woman who, has invested her whole life in her son. She thinks he absolutely hung the moon, to the point that she's not been able really to accept the young wife he selected, and the little girl that now has come to them. And the terrible switch in fate has happened. He has died young. And so this woman is left, all that's left of her beloved son is this grandchild that she has no relationship with. And it was just one of those stories that was getting harder and harder to write. It was a story about grief and a story about not connecting. And so I put it on the back burner. And this was years ago. And after the fact, not long, I got invited to teach at the Bennington Writing Seminars. And it was for 2 weeks in the summer. And I thought, whoa, well, I really can't do that unless I take my children. And how do I take my children unless I take someone with me? So off I went to Bennington with my two children and my mother. And no sooner did we get there and get all set up, but people heard that I had this built-in grandmother. And so a few other writers brought their children and left them with my mother. And so I thought after a couple hours one evening that I better go check on her. And my mother always really liked everything in order and children doing what they were told to do. And I walk in and my mother met me at the door kind of frantic. And she's like, "You've got to do something about this." And I go in and there's this adorable little girl, just scamp is the word that comes to mind, this wonderful short pixie haircut all over the place, ink all over her. And she had proceeded to sit with a big stack of paper and draw picture after picture of what she thought my mother would look like naked. And so there were all these wildly colored body parts all over the room, and my mother was running around picking them up and balling them up and throwing them away. And that little girl was just fiercely drawing more, just as fast as my mother was crumpling them up. And I have often told people, my first reaction is I was filled with admiration because this little girl had managed to seize control within a couple of hours, something I had not been able to do much of my life. So, that's an anecdote and something I laughed about forever. And then all of a sudden I get back to my desk, and I'm thinking, you give that child a stack of paper and some Sharpies, and here we go. And it was the thing that made that story move. Suddenly there was something to describe. The drawings, the smell of the markers, the smudges all over the grandmother's beige carpet. That just kind of came in out of nowhere. It gave comic relief. So it's putting an anecdote together with a story idea or with a memory. So it was long after the fact of doing that story that I realized that the only image you really get of her son, other than old childhood memories that she has clung to of him growing up, but the memory of him at the end of his life is he has had a heart attack way too young in life, and he was working as a lineman, and so he's actually up on a pole, and no one realizes that that something has happened to it. So it's just this image of this young man sort of suspended from this telephone pole. And I thought long after the fact, that one sentence was all about, here's someone working in communication or attempting to communicate, and the whole story is about a lack of communication. I don't think that, for me at least as a writer, those things never happen in the right order. I look back and I see that piece naturally blew in because what was on my mind was a situation of two people who could not communicate with one another. And I had to give him a job and a way that he had died. And I just happened to put him there. And I do think those pieces feed what comes after. There's a natural logic. Here's one of my repeats. I always tell my students, the one hard and fast thing I believe in this business is that we will never, ever be as smart as our subconscious. That our mind is always out there several steps ahead of us trying to put the pieces together conjuring memories or details or facts, something you read in the newspaper, some jingle that's stuck in your head. It all starts to weave together and become a piece. And so years later, I still would find myself thinking of that young man, and feeling like, even though I had told his mother's story, and even though he's not the same man of a story I wrote called The Lineman, there was a connection, because I continued to think about that job, and greatly inspired by listening to the songwriter Jimmy Webb, driving along, listening to NPR, and this great interview where he talked about the idea of that song. And it was a very similar process that struck me. If I have it right, I think he had in mind that great line, and I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. I think that was a line he had. And, it's great line looking for a song. And he had the pressure of having been asked to write a song, a follow-up song for Glenn Campbell. And then, he's driving like around Kansas or Oklahoma or something, and sees a man up a telephone pole, talking. He didn't know, was he listening or talking? And he thought it was just this stark picture of loneliness. And of course, it became Wichita Lineman. And he talked about how he was just trying to write about ordinary people with extraordinary thoughts. And, as a writer, I was just really, really moved by that. Because I feel like that's what I'm often trying to do. And so part of my interest in constantly mining those early memories is a lot about that. So I have a different story about a lineman. The wonderful magazine Ecotone was great enough to publish it. And I'll get back. Okay, so other than the Jimmy Webb story, the image I already had, what I brought to that story these years later was also my own experience of these visits with my mother, and sort of always going in, hoping to connect, not knowing if you will, or not knowing what comes out of it. And I keep, as I say, many, many notes of memories or just things that occur to me. And one memory that I've always loved from my own childhood is my grandmother had some of those freestanding, I guess they're gas heaters with the little window, like a porthole where you can look in and see the fire. And, my grandmother was just one of those people who got up with the sun and went to bed with the sun. And I loved to spend the night with her. It was like being in a time machine, when I spent the night with her, except for watching, Gunsmoke or Mannix on TV. It might as well have been, 1935. And it was just very quiet. And she kind of let me just do whatever I wanted to with scissors and hammers and nails and paint. And it was pretty wonderful. And she would get up real, real early. And if my sister and cousins were there, whoever was there, our clothes would be hung on a little chair by that window of that heater. And so some of my best memories are sitting in a little rocking chair, staring into that little porthole while my grandmother is wandering around in the dark, getting breakfast. And, that sounds like the stuff of memoir. Certainly it is. But I find that I weave a lot of that into my fiction. I often give characters a memory that's mine, a childhood place or person or something I recall, a movie, a song. I had a few things planned to say here, but I think I have, I think I said, a lot of it. I came back to that whole notion of communication, because it is something that I feel my work comes back to again and again. A conversation, a missed conversation, a misunderstanding, just getting those words just right. I had in my recent novel somebody talking about a man who had once said, it comes out in a trial that he had said to someone, written on a page, "I'll take care of you." So there were all these questions. Was it, "I'll take care of you," or was it, "I'll take care of you"? And I'm just endlessly fascinated by that kind of ambiguity, and that words ever get where we mean them to go. So words on the phone, words on Crowdcast, to the 97 people I'm grateful are in the room. I'm still amazed that you can put a stamp on a letter and put it in a box, and those words get where they're going. So as a writer, in a lot of ways, I feel a little bit like a collagist or a mechanic, or, just a word collector. And I know I will think of other things to say. Maybe I should look at some of these questions. I'm always, at this point, I'm really afraid to press anything. But this one, let's say, what is the difference between your approach to writing a story and your approach to writing a novel? How do you organize a novel? Do you know what's going to happen when you start writing? Hey, Sandra Worsham, nice to see your name. I don't always know if it belongs in a story or a novel when I'm collecting the notes. I think I oftentimes have an idea and know the difference. I'm very interested in sort of community settings, and so I've had quite a few novels that are dependent on the community, and so I always know in that case. But sometimes I have no idea if this little anecdote or detail goes with character in the novel. So I have sort of the plot lines. It's clear to me 98% of the time, but all the little details or the lines of dialogue that might belong to an individual happens all along the way in a very similar fashion. Right now I'm working on short stories, and so I'm in that process of going through the file of all these notes and things I'm interested in pursuing and writing about a little bit more, and I'm matching them up. This story goes over here in this person's life, and this memory goes to this person, and this anecdote, and here's someone who's likes this kind of music. And I slowly build all those pieces, and it's kind of like, my mother's trinkets in the pot. You get enough trinkets in there, and you can start stirring and turn up the heat, and think that you might have something. With a novel and a story, both, I like to write to the finish line And then for me, the love and the great luxury is the revision time. And, I get more and more excited about going back and beginning the revision process, because by the time I get to the end, I've got a whole stash of notes, and I think I know where they go as filler. When I'm writing forward on the plot, I often am just focused on getting to the end of the race. And, so I might even put in parentheses, this is where, you're going to write a scene between these two people, and it's probably happening this time of day. I mean, it might be so generic, but I keep going, knowing that I'll come back. And it's really so exciting to me as a writer. It's kind of like, have you ever gotten really excited, like about somebody's birthday or holidays, and you get your presents and you put them in a really safe, good place, and then lo and behold, you find them, and it's like, oh, I totally forgot this, or it's like finding it all over again. And that's how I feel about a lot of these notes after the fact. When I'm going back and plugging everything in. So, sorry, I got off track there. But the long and short answer is, in the biggest scope of a work, I know the difference. And then in the intricate parts, I mean, even on this recent novel, I found parts in hieroglyphics early on, and I'd be, no. This is a story. This is its own story. I started out with 2 additional characters who never made it into the novel. My wonderful editor, Kathy Porres, she didn't even meet those people. They were way back at the beginning. They were like the beginning of the novel. And then lo and behold, it's like they started the party and then weren't invited. I had to, they're off. They'll have their own thing. And Kathy, if Kathy's on here, she may be. When she saw the novel the first time, it was put together, but it still had that feeling of thousands of pieces and parts, and sort of like, does this screw go here, and does this piece go here? And to me, that's really exciting. I think in another life, I might have been a mechanic, and it may be why I have such great appreciation and admiration for hand tools and that kind of work, the assembly, put it together, take it apart. Hi, Kathy. Oh, I see she is here. Prior to working with Kathy, I worked with the wonderful Shannon Ravenel, and she also was very tolerant of all these pieces and parts, because it was a lot of fun talking back and forth and working out where things go. So I hope I did your question justice. Do I know what's going to happen? I almost never know what's going to happen. I often have a vague idea. I once heard the writer Sue Miller say it's like she knows she's going to travel from the West Coast to the East, but she hasn't decided what highways to take, where to stop for the night, where to eat. And I have this general idea, and usually with a novel, but a lot of times I'm surprised. Almost always there's at least one surprise, and I like that. I think I would be really disappointed. It's why I'm always fearful of those who are completely locked in, with no possible change, because I do think that logic finds its way. You know how you tried like the way the water drains through your yard, and you might try to reroute it and do all these things, and it just keeps, like the ocean, it's going to find its way. And I really think that stories often do that. There's a natural path, and I feel like it's my job as a writer to try to find that most natural path. So here from Cameron, thank you, Cameron Redfern. Would love to hear about your editing process. When do you know you're done? Your novels that we get to read is what number draft? Oh, okay. Well, I'm so glad Kathy's here. I wish I could pull her up here on this virtual stage with me. How about if I say, when Kathy says you're good to go? No, I think there are two finish lines. There's the finish line when I, as an individual writer, feel a kind of satisfaction that I've brought the work as far as I can, and that's a really important feeling to have. I think the biggest trouble I ever got in as a writer was getting too much feedback too early before I had a good sense of what it was I really wanted to do. And so there's that finish line, and it's possible to come to that personal finish line and still have an absolute mess. And I'll be the first to say that is how, in many ways, Kathy saw, well, it was a little messy. I recently, going through all these things and organizing, found all of my elementary school report cards, and I made good grades until conduct in junior high, but there in elementary school I had all these little A's, and then all across the line for handwriting, B's, and my mother kept writing in the comments, I wish I knew what Jill is doing with her writing. And I know one teacher said she won't take her time, she just goes way too fast. So I don't know, it might have served me well to be messy and sloppy from the beginning, but it's certainly a pattern that I've continued. And so when Kathy has come through the editing, and then it goes to a copy editor, and then it goes through many levels. But I feel like once I had that green light from Kathy, I felt my part was done. Let's see, do I have another? What draft? I don't even know what draft that would be, because I work so often in sections when I'm redoing, and a lot of a draft might just be switching two places or two chapters. Do you ever let people know if you're including a memory that includes them? How have they reacted? And do you care about the reaction? Does it influence your writing? Thank you, Amanda. I have included people in memories. I make a habit of trying, not to include people in something they would be upset, about. I mean, I think I would find all of that really distracting, and I know we often have things we want to write about that involve other people, and my advice to my students is always to write that first draft with total honesty and openness. Write it as if you're the only person who will ever see it. Don't let your worries slow you down, but then keep in mind that you might find ways in revision. Once you have that emotional truth on the page, you might find ways to reinvent something, or you might surprise yourself with the way it turns out. Now, as to real memories that are positive and happy and fun, yeah, I put those in there. You know, I think my children, you know, well, they've even said to me that there's certain things they'll be able to go back and see, because they're things I have lifted right from their childhoods. Memories that I did not want to get away from me. And in hieroglyphics, which I haven't really talked about it all, but I used 2 real events, a train wreck in North Carolina in 1943 and the Coconut Grove fire in Boston in 1942. And so I interviewed some people in my hometown, people now no longer with us. And one of them was a man my parents went to all through school with. And it turns out that he was an Eagle Scout at the time of that train crash as a young teenager. And his job was running telegrams back and forth as people were trying to connect with their relatives in New England. And his name was Horace. And so I named a character in the novel after him. And at one point, or the mother names her baby Horace after that kind young boy named Horace. So that kind of mention by memory, you know, is always a pleasure. And I feel like, you know, my dad worked at the post office for many years. And so, you know, in my novel, Carolina Moon, I have a whole segment that is kind of me imagining my dad, you know, at work at 5 a.m. So things like that. Things, you know, my grandmother's voice. I can go and point to very real memories. So I think you're probably asking that question at both ends. So I hope I've done it justice there. Let's see. You mentioned being very flexible as a writer. What does a typical day look like for you? Do you have a set time that you sit down to write? You know, in an ideal day, I would write early morning. I mean, I would love nothing better than to know that I could work from 7 to 12 and then walk around and wander and come back and maybe be surprised or maybe see where I didn't do what I had hoped to do, you know, at the end of the day. And when I do get big blocks of time, that's pretty much the schedule. I don't sit there when nothing's coming. I take a walk, or I clean a closet, or I do something like that. You know, I just, when nothing's coming, I start moving around. But just like, you know, back to Jimmy Webb, what was it? He had this great line about, you know, you know, it might look like to the passerby that this person's not, you know, just doing this one routine task over and over. He's picking something, he's hanging something, but you have no idea what's happening in his mind. And I think I do love that kind of internal, external view that you can be out there walking or doing, and you have this whole other world happening. The best thing I ever learned as a writer, and I have told this a million times, so pardon to many of you, but my dad used to love to fish, and his idea is, you get a little sand chair and you go park it, and you just sit there, and maybe you drink a beer, and you're just sitting there looking at the ocean. And he told me one time, he said, but if I just bring my chair out here and I just sit down and stare at the ocean and drink beer, people will think, I'm just doing nothing, or somebody like your mother will come by and ask when I'm going to get up and do something. Why, how can I just sit there all day? And he said, so that's why I fish. And he would just see, he had one of those things that held his pole. So he would just sit there and stare at the top of his pole in the ocean, waiting for something to happen. But the whole time, he was someone who loved to say, oh, this would be a good story. This would be a good story. And he said his trick was that if the fish ever really were biting a lot, he just stopped baiting his hook. And so I've always loved that. I think it's great to have those activities you do in life where you appear to be very busy and doing something, but your mind is free. And so, everything from yard work to you name it, taking a nice long walk qualifies for that. Let's see. Where am I here? How would you did I miss one? Let's see. Oh, that was Penelope with the flexibility. I take lots of notes and store up for a big block of time when I just feel like the top of my head is going to fly off if I don't start typing. And another prompt I would throw out there for you is if you ever, if you ever have all these ideas and fragments and bits and pieces, and you're not quite sure what to do with them or where to go, I do this thing I just call cleaning out the attic. My first writing teacher, Max Steele, would have us do this exercise. He called it writing a 1,000-word sentence, where he would just have us sit down, and the exercise was you had to produce 4 pages, single space, don't get up from your chair. And I've had students do that for years, because almost always something appears. I dare you not to tell a story, not to refer to that time. And so a lot of times when I have a lot of different ideas, I give myself that exercise and I just sit and I type. This is what I know about the novel I'm working on. It takes place here, these people, da-da. And then it just slowly grows, but I type what I know. And oftentimes I uncover things that way, and I just do it over and over, clean out the attic. So, and now I'm actually, given the way I got to this tonight, I'm feeling proud of myself that I'm reading the questions here. How would you transition from nonfiction to fiction? Where did that go? Just as I bragged, it went away. How would you transition from nonfiction to fiction? And what's the best way to make your writing humorous? That's hard. I think if it is nonfiction and you're sort of leaning heavily that way, I might write it that way first and then with the idea that I was going to come back through and think of the ways that I might fictionalize it. I mean, that's kind of an endless topic of conversation, which way to go with a work like that. Sometimes people are writing something that's even a kind of hybrid. So it's hard to call without knowing. How to introduce humor, grab it by the tail when you see it. I sort of keep a stash of things I see or hear or observe that I think are funny, with no idea where they'll go. And here's another thing I've told a million times, but it's the first example to my mind. The woman when I went to pick up some dry cleaning years ago, who said to me, "Oh, the humility is just awful these days." Enough, right? I couldn't get out to the car fast enough. And I finally found the right mouth for it to come out of. But things like that, I'll just think of something. I mean, I once said to a friend on a particularly bad day, I think everything had gone wrong and I was really mad. And I said, "Oh, if I was a dog, I would have been put down by now." And it ended up becoming a first sentence. So, you say things out there, or you hear somebody say something, and people respond. And so I keep a lot of those one-liners, just waiting to see when you might need some comic relief, or like the anecdote, about my mother and the naked pictures. I've always been so sorry I didn't find a way to smuggle at least one of those pictures out of that room. Because the thought of it does always make me laugh. We all have those things that make us laugh. Thank goodness we have things that make us laugh. Amanda, hi there. How do you deal with imposter syndrome or self-doubt if you do? Oh, I think that is occupational hazard and just goes with it. Yeah, I mean, I think that my way of dealing with that is just feeling really lucky and grateful to have this thing that I really love doing in life. And I think just, when doubt creeps in, just to really try to turn inward and focus on the actual work. And I think work takes care of it, but I think you're in good company with that one, or you certainly are with me. How much do you rely on trusting your own emotional moves versus consulting others? Thank you, David. If we're talking about the same thing, I do it the way that feels most natural to me first. How about that? I do it the most natural way that comes to me, and then I get a response. And I have found that if you have 3 readers whose opinions you really, really trust, and any 2 have the same problem in the same way, I immediately concede. These are readers I really trust, and I just have come to discover that 9 out of 10 times they're right. And usually when I think about it long enough, it's not that I go against my will either. It's that if I have put the time and thought and energy into it, I almost always see what they're doing. And it doesn't mean I can't find a new way to put my spin on it. So I think the beauty of fiction is it can often be a compromise. What a concept, right? A compromise. It does not have to be, this way or that way, and a huge divide. I think writing is all about finding, a kind of balance on the page, or it is for me. It's I worry about how we live in a society where there's so much pressure and emphasis on winning and being the best. And I guess what I would say is that I think it's from our failures and our losses in life that we learn the most, and that we grow, and that we move into new places. And so, for me as a writer, I think taking those risks, doing it my way, knowing that I did it my way, even if I fail, that still feels really, really good. And I would never have known, if you don't try, then you can always say, oh, well, I wanted to do this and they made me do that. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to blame someone. So I really do it my way. And then if I fail, I find a way to satisfy myself with a new alternative, a fix, or something that does work. But again, to have those 3 readers that you trust, that's a good place to go once you have gotten it where you feel proud of it, satisfied with where you are. And I think I saw a question from my friend Scoop Ferrio here. Let's see. Is North Carolina a funnier setting than Massachusetts? Thinking of arsenic poisonings and killer owls. Oh my. Well, the newspapers in either place. How about that? There's plenty in North Carolina. And I have always gone to, there's nothing quite like a local newspaper for a good story. And yes, I get my fill around here, but there was a recent story in a Massachusetts paper in the town where I once lived, David, and there was a recent story about potatoes. 2 baked potatoes had been thrown on the lawn of the library. This story made it onto Colbert. So I think people are doing funny things in the North and the South. Owls in both places, arsenic in both places. Probably it's been used more in the South, but I don't know. We also have in Massachusetts the great Lizzie Borden getaway. So lots of stories in both places. I would say lots of stories everywhere. And maybe that's a good point for me to tell you what your homework assignment would be if you were in my class, and you had answered all those questions at the beginning when you didn't use your 15-minute rule and leave class since I was so late. I would now say that I would like for you completed that sentence, I wish, and you also wrote down an early memory. And I'd like for you to think of what those 2 have in common if they naturally connect to each other? Is there a thematic connection? There often is. If you don't see it immediately, let it joggle around a few days and think about it. Or think about the story that would allow those two pieces to come together. And then I've given you loads of other things, to fill in all the gaps. I forgot to tell you to write down whatever images spring to mind when you hear the word home, which I've done for over 30 years. And it's been really satisfying because you get all kinds of answers, but over all these years, most of the answers have come down to childhood beds and kitchen tables and front porches and trees in the backyard. I ask you to pick a season, a scar, a favorite fairy tale. There's all kinds of wonderful material embedded there. So hopefully, did any of you, I guess I can't see, you could put it in the chat if anyone, bingo, all of a sudden your wish and your memory connected. I also give Max Steele credit for this exercise. I was lucky enough as a college student to work with Max, and then the wonderful Lee Smith and Louis Rubin, who founded Algonquin Books. So it definitely launched me, and so I'm always thrilled to be at Flyleaf, even virtually, because it's like coming home.
Thank you so much, Jill. What a fun conversation. Our extended monologue, I guess, rather. It was lovely, and I feel like you gave the audience so much to think about in terms of places to take writing, ways to incorporate real world experiences without without leaning too much into memoir. I think your novels are so great because you're able to work in these extremely authentic moments in ways that fit the stories. So I think everyone in the audience will have a lot to think about going forward. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching tonight and for bearing with us. I know it was a tough beginning of the event tonight for everyone, including Jill. So thank you for your patience as well. And
I really, really appreciate so much.
No problem. It is always such a pleasure to host you. And I know that clearly we can work through even tough tech situations and come out strong. So I really appreciate you. And then for everyone watching, if you'd like to buy a copy of Hieroglyphics or any of Jill's previous books, Hieroglyphics is now in paperback and it's available at Flyleaf. And Jill's going to stop by this week to sign some copies for us. If you'd like one that's personalized or inscribed, please put that in your order comments and Jill would be happy to do that for you. Again, just thank you all so much for coming out. If you would like to share this with a friend, feel free to send them the link. It'll be available just as a video at the same link, and it won't have the delay. It'll just jump right in. So feel free to send it out or share it. I appreciate all of that support as well. And thank you again to Jill.
Thank you so much for all of you who came and waited. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to the Genius Bar tomorrow. And Talia, thank you, because you walked me through. Between you and Tom here, I made it. So thank you. I'm delighted, and I really hope one of these days, I will get to see people in person But the wonderful thing is I see names here. There's Lisa. I mean, I see people I know from all over who are here. So I need to scroll. That's very exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your night. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.